One of my favourite things about covering the Nintendo Switch is delving into the ports of AAA games. Because as a long-time handheld gamer, I've always wanted to have console quality in my hands. Of course, there are great examples of this on the Nintendo Switch like Nier Automata, but there are also some awful ports that make you wonder why they were even developed in the first place. And Mortal Kombat 1 launched today on all platforms. The game looks and runs great on PS5 and Xbox, which is to be expected. And NetherRealm skipped out on the last gen ports, which had me curious about the Switch version. And let me tell you, it has problems. From jittery cutscenes with loads of visual issues, a frame rate that refuses to stay still, and long load times, it makes you wonder why this game cost $70, and if it should have been made in the first place. As a casual fan of the Mortal Kombat series, I was excited for the suite of single player content. The stories, characters, and gruesome visuals drew me into the more recent entries in the franchise, and I couldn't wait to see what the cutscenes had to offer. And straight away, I was disappointed. The cutscenes themselves are great. They look fantastic and the facial animations are so real. But then as the cutscenes progressed, the game started to stutter, so I wasn't hopeful for actual gameplay. And going forward, pretty much every single cutscene had one, if not more, of these issues. There was stuttering, there was audio desyncing, there was screen tearing, and I honestly just struggled to get immersed in the story as a result. In fights, Mortal Kombat 1 looks just okay. I guess this is to be expected, and it wouldn't be too bad an issue if the game ran smoothly. The first battle wasn't too bad. There wasn't much going on, and I was surprised by the relative smoothness of this fight. But as I went on, and more particle effects were shown and the cameo attacks were introduced, the frame rate absolutely tanked. From what I can tell, the game seems to deliberately drop the frame rate during certain attacks like fatalities and cameo attacks, which was probably necessary, but there's a bit of time before and after these attacks where the game struggles to catch up, and it just didn't feel good. Some genres can get away with having sloppy performance, but I can't think of a genre that needs a smooth frame rate and snappy inputs more than a fighter. If the game stutters for even a second, it could mess up the timing on a combo, or if the inputs don't register, you could just miss out on a special move and just stand there punching the air. And unfortunately, this happens way too often in Mortal Kombat 1. So far, the story isn't particularly difficult, so I haven't been punished as a result of these issues, but it's still frustrating, and I personally would say it's unplayable. In the same fight, the frame rate would jump up to 60 FPS, and then dip down, and then go back up, and then absolutely tank when I did a cameo attack, and it simply wasn't fun. Look, I'm absolutely crap at Mortal Kombat, and I always have been. But here, I feel like the game's performance is getting in the way of me pulling off my mediocre combos. The difference in graphics from cutscenes and gameplay is so massive that the transition between the two was jarring, and sometimes hilarious. What's most important is that the character models look pretty decent, but the background and everything else surrounding the characters is where the game falters. Yeah, the textures are low res, and there's some serious aliasing on the objects, but where it's most noticeable is in the eyes. For some reason, the eyeballs go completely still when you transition from cutscene to gameplay, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. There's also a couple of visual glitches like a strange flickering effect on some clothes, and weird once-off issues like Shao Kahn's hammer somehow being behind him, or a head floating in the air after Scorpion's fatality.
I expected more brutality. Scorpion wins.
Now we all expect graphical downgrades on the Switch, and if the performance was solid, then this video would be completely different, because I could end everything that I just said with all of these compromises were worthwhile because the gameplay experience is so smooth. But I can't say that. So it still begs the question, why was this ported to the Switch right now? I then headed into some multiplayer matches, and oh lord, this was frustrating. The start, the transition from lobby to match in ranked mode, just feels weird. You're ready up against your opponent, then the screen goes black while the game loads, and then bam, a laggy intro cutscene and the game starts. And when I got into a game, the input delay made it impossible to play. It is hard to know if this is the game or my internet connection though, so this might vary from person to person. And then when we look at casual matches where you can actually see your opponent pick their character and stage, everything takes so long to load that I don't know what I prefer. A black screen or this. The new feature of this game is the invasion mode. In this, you travel around the game board fighting enemies with loads of different objectives. Some are just normal fights and others have cool modifiers, but the load times ruined my enjoyment of this game. I'm a casual fighting fan, and I love when fighting games have interesting single player modes, but loading in and out of every battle makes this more tedious than it is fun. It can take upwards of 1 minute to load into a fight, then another long load screen to get out of the fight, and this happens on pretty much every tile on the board. Underneath all of these issues though, is a game that I could see myself loving, on a different platform. When the cutscenes were working, I was engrossed in this story because it completely flipped everything on its head. The voice acting is top notch and the facial animations are fantastic. And while I've only dabbled in the invasion mode, Jake has said that it's an awesome mode that offers loads of content, and he felt constantly rewarded while also using it as a good time to learn new characters. And with all that said and done, I went out and bought Mortal Kombat 1 on the PS5 because I really want to play it. Now the final question still remains. Should you buy Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch? No, I don't recommend it at all. There are simply too many issues getting in the way of enjoying the game. It costs $70, which is way too much for a port of this quality. And it's impossible to know if it's a hardware or time issue. Maybe the Switch simply isn't powerful enough to get this game running, and if that's the case, then this game should never have been released. But there's always a chance that if given more time, this game could actually run on the Switch. And that makes me wonder if they should have delayed the Switch version to give it 6 months of extra work to get it to an acceptable level. And maybe in the future, it will be at that level, and if that does happen, we'll be here with an update. But as for now, I say avoid Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch. Thanks for watching. I would love to know what you think of the Switch version of Mortal Kombat 1. I really appreciate your time. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next video.